At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brandon House.
And welcome. Glad you are with us. Joining me today is going to be Patrick Wood. Let's talk about the Hegelian dialectic process. Oh, no, don't let the eyes roll back in your head here. Hegelian dialectic process, conflict, that's all it means. Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, conflicting with each other in order to bring about a third way or a third option. In other words, to get the people to go where they otherwise would never go. What is World War III really all about? Is it about regime change? Probably. Getting rid of Putin, who doesn't want to go along with all the New World Order, LGBTQ, green agenda? Probably. Is it also about nation building? A region? Minerals? President Trump came out today with a tweet that he's firmed up a deal with China. Apparently it has to do with minerals from China up front. So much seems to be about getting hard assets. What was it, about 2010 when I did the radio show telling you guys I thought we were headed toward hard assets, land, and what's under the land to be the basis for a global currency, or at least something to back up our own currency, which is why the federal government was taking up so much federal state land and federalizing it. 2010, I think it was, we looked up a few weeks ago, that radio show in our vault. It doesn't take a lot to know that. You just got to be thinking, well, this fiat currency eventually is going to implode, so you got to go to something, but no one's going to trust it if it doesn't have a hard backing, right? Hard assets. And now President Trump's cutting a deal with China. They're going to provide minerals up front. Is Russia in World War III, is that about them wanting to get a hold of minerals in China or in Russia, but also getting rid of Putin for regime change, for a part of maybe a different region as we go toward 10 world regions as promoted by the European Commission, the Club of Rome, the UN? Isn't that what Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 has been about? Grabbing up all the world's resources in the name of environmentalism. So the people who want to create a new system to replace the failing Federal Reserve System have a way to continue to enslave people on a global scale and benefit from their work, their labor. Isn't at the core of everything really that work, labor? And so you make everybody a part of the system and you become their slave. And whatever work you do, they tokenize your assets, your property, your values. By the way, isn't that what Klaus Schwab said? By 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy? What if the conflict with Mexico right now, and that's really who's helping fund this. Federalists had a great piece out yesterday on how Mexico has a lot to answer for helping to push this these riots in California. They're waving the Mexican flags like crazy there. Yesterday, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, in the Oval Office, standing next to the Resolute desk at which President Trump was sitting, greatly chided the president of Mexico for encouraging these riots. Now, why would the president of Mexico do that? Who would be encouraging the president of Mexico to do that? Who is really pushing this agenda, folks? We have several members of Congress, both the in the House and the Senate calling for investigations into this guy by the last name of Singham, who they say may be funding this, who has reported ties back to the CCP, some guy that's close to being a billionaire. Great testimony today on this, by the way, by Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'll play that on Brandon House Live tonight. Who are some of the other folks maybe in the shadows that are funding these groups and pushing for this conflict? Because again, thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, let people clash, and then you come up with a third option or the solution to the problem. The problem that's been manufactured, the manufactured crisis. Remember in 2020, early 2020, I did the presentation on, what was it, ID 2020 or ID 2030? I can't remember what it was called, but it was a conference at the United Nations about how everyone needs to get chipped, basically. That's part of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. Remember, it's goal 16.9 in the global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. That we'll all be tagged like cattle. And the idea was we could do this for banking. You had the Bank for International Settlements behind it, which is the central bank of central bankers. You had the United Nations behind it. You had all kinds of globalist groups and organizations, big ones, behind this idea of getting everybody tagged. And it was said, remember in 2020 when we covered that with you guys one night on TV during the COVID pandemic lockdowns, that this would be used to deal with cross-border travel. So how do you get everybody to agree to be tagged? Well, you have a failing currency. Box checked, failing U.S. currency due to debt, fiat currency backed by nothing. Wait a minute, what happened to going into the Fort Knox? See if the gold is there. Oh, that didn't happen, did it? Congressman Massey from Kentucky is offering up legislation to go into Fort Knox. We'll see where that goes. Auditing the Fed, that's never happened. I don't think it ever will. But they have to replace the failing system with something else. The failing dollar. By the way, there's also legislation pending. New legislation pending on how we're going to take all these cryptocurrencies and stable coins and bring them under federal control and standards. They're moving for something. They may not call it a central bank digital currency. Maybe they'll call it something else. Maybe the central bank, as we know, it won't even exist anymore. But I kind of think it will. Maybe they'll just decide, you know what, we thought we could go without the central bank digital currency, but we have no choice. We have to go to it anyway. At least they took that controversy off the table for a while because we were told that wasn't going to happen. But maybe that's just a ruse. But back to why we're seeing this in California with Mexico pushing it. I think it's part of the Hegelian dialectic. Have you guys seen the president of the Senate in Mexico? Now, I'm pretty sure this was in Spanish, and I got a D in high school Spanish, so I can't help you here. Let's see what he says here. Let's see if this is English or Spanish, guys. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, he says, when President-elect Donald Trump said who I got to go slower, who was 16 days away from taking office, this is the president of the Senate in Mexico, by the way, for the first time as president, about to assume the role. And I said, yes, we'll build the wall. Yes, we'll pay for it, but we'll do it according to the map of Mexico from 1830. Now, folks, those of you listening on radio today, he's holding up a map and saying, we're going to build the wall from the map of 1830, which means that Mexico takes over pretty much all of Texas and Arizona and New Mexico and California. And I think you got Utah in there. Wait a minute, that sounds like La Raza, the race, the group La Raza, the race. So he says, we'll do it based on that map. He said, this is what the United States was in 1830, and this was part of Mexico. It wasn't all Mexico. If you can see, maybe a third, at least a quarter of the North American territory was part of Mexico until 1846. We were stripped of these territories. We were settled there before. The nation, now known as the United States. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, I guess that's it, Guadalupe Hidalgo, establishes rights for the people settled in those territories which were not respected. The city of Nuevo Laredo. Laredo was a Mexican city. Laredo. Isn't there a John Wayne movie? I love that John Wayne movie. And the city of Nuevo Laredo was formed by the Mexicans who lived in Laredo and didn't want to stay on the United States side and come over to what is now national territory. With this geography, how can they talk about liberating Los Angeles and California? The United States government? Liberate them from whom? The Mexican men and women who are settled in that place are settled in what has always been their homeland. Names don't lie. The most spoken language in Los Angeles is Spanish. Don't need to speak English to be in Los Angeles. And here we are in the current situation. This is part of the United States, yes. The United States government has the right to implement whatever immigration measures it deems appropriate, certainly. But they have no right to violate the dignity of migrants. They have no right to separate families. They have no right to subject them to suffering, persecution, or harassment. They have no right to break the law that the United States government and the people of the United States set themselves. Now, with that, what does this sound like to you? What does this sound like to you, folks? Think Hegelian dialectic process. Didn't we hear a few months ago President Trump talking about, and has said it over and over, making Canada our 51st state? And there was even a map shown or talked about Canada, Mexico, Greenland, maybe even Panama. But certainly Mexico, America, and Canada. Maybe this is where we should go. Well, that would make sense from a standpoint of natural resources to now back your North American currency, which the president of Mexico at the time, Vicente Fox, told Larry King was in the works. Down the road, he said to Larry King when he was meeting with George W. Bush. It's down the road, but that's later. The Amero, a North American currency. What are you going to back it with? Hard assets, land, minerals, oil, natural gas, hydroelectricity, labor, people. And then what are you going to? And then how are you going to deal with these people saying, "This was our land, we want it back"? And if we don't get it back, we're going to be rioting. No justice, no peace, kind of thing. So what do? You have a conflict. So the idea has already been put out there, North American Union, for years, something we've been talking about. My friend, the late Phyllis Schlafly, and I talked about, whatever, right? President Trump brings up this idea. We're going, what is that about? Sounds like the technocracy of the 1930s that Patrick Wood was educating us about. And now we have all of a sudden, voila, conflict in California with Mexican flags waving like crazy. And billionaires supposedly funding it, and NGOs, many of those, of course, tied back to the United Nations, who wants what? World government, and has already done what? Divide the world into 10 regions. So maybe this conflict is about creating a crisis, and then we negotiate a solution to the manufactured crisis, which is, all right, tell you what. Why don't we merge together as 3 nations? Why don't we get everybody biochipped, 16.9 of the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and everybody can come back and forth, cross-border crossing. We can keep our North American highway and interstate they all have been talking about, and problem solved, life goes on. And you can keep your housekeeper, by the way. She ain't going anywhere. I don't know. We'll talk about this more on the other side. Don't go away. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHousebg.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, website worldviewradio.com. Now, I've been telling you guys for so many years, if you want to understand the globalists and what they're doing, you have to understand the Hegelian dialectic process. Now, I've shown you the Fabian window. George Bernard Shaw developed the Fabian window, I think about 1910 off the top of my head.
This is your before and after story. Southeastern College can help you prepare for a secure and fulfilling career in the growing healthcare field. We offer a wide range of careers to choose from. So whether you want to be a medical assistant, medical billing and coding specialist, nurse, surgical technologist, or another healthcare career, we've got you covered. Become a vital part of a healthcare team and make a real difference. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
Been a while since I've talked about this. And of course, you have the man in the red coat and the guy in the green coat, and they're banging with anvils or with hammers on a hot globe that's on an anvil. And the guy in the green coat is holding this hot globe that's just come out of the fire with a pair of tongs on the anvil while they bang it with hammers. And at the top, it says, remold it nearer to the heart's desire. To the far left, you have a guy in a purple coat with a bellow, blowing air, oxygen onto the fire to make it bigger. Take a crisis and you make it bigger. You blow life, air, wind, oxygen. You give it oxygen. Give it more oxygen to make the fire bigger. And at the bottom of the window are the Fabians on their knees, praying to a stack of Fabian books. George Bernard Shaw on the far left, standing, clapping, kind of mocking them because he wanted this all to be known. Everybody should know about this. This is a great idea. They're like, be quiet. And right above the hot earth that's on fire is the wolf in sheep's clothing. Look at that, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Be very careful, folks, of the wolf in sheep's clothing. Be very careful of the religion that is being used. Wolves in sheep's clothing. This is the globalist. They tell you what they're going to do, but the question is, do people listen? Do they pay attention? The Hegelian dialectic, the change comes from the conflict. Saul Alinsky knew that. All of the conflicts that are going on now, folks, they're all, most of them, created, manipulated, and developed on purpose. And if our own economic system, which was built really now after we stripped the gold window and closed that, Nixon, got the Federal Reserve 1913 with a currency now backed by nothing really but consumer confidence. That all eventually had to unravel, but they knew that. They knew that. And so they were planning for a new system. And isn't that what the Technocrats, and this is really all about, and Palantir and Peter Thiel talking about the option is either Antichrist or Armageddon, unless we have another system. That's what it's all about, folks. And you're just tagged cattle in the system. They knew they eventually had to go to this. Now they're manufacturing crises or what are naturally occurring from their bad decisions. Ideas have consequences. They're now going to escalate the crises until the people tire and go where they would never otherwise go without the crisis. Mexico says, we want all that land. That was ours. No justice, no peace. American corporations say we need that cheap labor. Americans say, well, we've had these people in our church, in our communities. Can't just rip them out of here. They go to our schools. We know their kids. Some of them have even been paying taxes. So you get all the emotion going, and then you say, okay, here's a solution. Let's merge the three nations together. Let's go to one currency, back it with all of our minerals and assets, have a great reset. Is that what's going on here? Oh, by the way, everybody's got to get biochips so we know who's coming and going, and people aren't milking the system and hitting it 2 or 3 times with benefits, which, by the way, Doge has told us that's going on. Well, that's very convenient for Doge to tell us all that. Now we realize how bad the corruption is, that people are angry. We want that to end. Well, we can get all that to end. Everybody's just got to get biochip. I guarantee you I'm one of the few people saying this. Another one is Patrick Wood. He joins us now. Patrick, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Welcome. Yes, indeed.
So what do you make of that 20-minute monologue?
Exactly. You know, the future is messy. That's all you can say. There's so many twists and turns. There's so many conflicts going on. Everyone should be examined in its own context. But you're right. There's the problem being presented to us, and then there's the solution, the third way. I think this has been with us for how many years? I mean, 100, 200 years at least, right?
Yes.
I know. These people, there's always a war going on somewhere. We had the war against drugs. We had the war against whatever, and, poverty. We had the potential war with Russia and Iran and in the Mideast. There's always been an enemy that has to be presented to make a threat serious enough to affect change in the country making this threat in the first place. That would be us at this point. This has been legendary. Just tried and true tactic. Crazy stuff.
Do you agree the Hegelian dialectic, this conflict?
Yes, this has been
a key piece of this puzzle.
It absolutely is, and not necessarily tied to Marxism per se, but this is a tried and proven principle to affect change.
And I would think the Fabians
Yes.
are by far the Fabian socialists. The Labour Party came out of the Fabian Socialist Society, the Labour Party of Great Britain. The Fabians are far more closer to the technocrats than the Marxists. The Marxists want revolution. The Fabians want socialism by evolution, not revolution. The Fabians want big government, big business, right? They want communitarianism.
Yeah.
Big government, big business. I see the Fabians being very, very willing to work with the technocrats, but they'll use the Marxists and the Islamists to burn the system down,
Yes.
to be the junkyard dogs, to intimidate, to break the kneecap of America so we all surrender. And then the Fabians and the globalists come in and the technocrats with the solution. That's what's going on here.
Exactly. And we can look back in history. Of course, there have always been people who wanted to control the world from the get-go. But now, in like the last century, we see the Fabians, we see the communists, we see the socialists, we see the technocrats. They all vied for some element of control in the last century. Who's going to finally get the prize? Well, prize. It was all about world control in the first place. It looks to me at this point that the technocrats are going, and technocracy in general is going to get the ultimate prize by slapping down a scientific dictatorship, which would be virtually impossible to escape from. But it could be other forces as well. That's a possibility we have to recognize. But certainly at this point, the Marxist element in our country, the ones that are rioting all across the country now, started in China and California. We've seen this before. With Black Lives Matter, for instance, the Marxist elements tearing society apart. And when they're done doing that, they get thrown under the bus. And so, these were the useful idiots. That's all you can say. You know, they're not. They have no clue what they're doing on the surface of it, but they're being used by other elements to tear down society.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And you know, the Bible tells us in the book of Daniel that the Antichrist is going to rip out 3 groups by the root. When he comes to power, he's going to rip out 3. It's Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, for whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. The Antichrist is going to have to rip out 3 of these groups, 3 of these horns, 10 horns. He's going to have to rip out 3 of them to install the 3 people he wants to finally get his own new world order. If you had to guess, just guessing, I've never asked anyone this question before. You're the first person I've ever asked this question of. If you had to guess, we have 10 regions being set up at some point. And you have 3 of the horns of the 10 that will not go along. What 3 regions do you think would be the 3 regions most likely not to be going along with Antichrist? If I had to guess, I'm wondering if it would be like a North American Union because of America's independence and the fight of the America First element that may be still around. And I'm wondering if it's, you know, again, I don't know what other 2 would be. But if you had to guess, if you had a North American Union, a South American Union, a Middle Eastern Union,
yes.
And maybe it's the Middle East. Maybe the Islamists are like, we're not going to go along because we're not worshiping a man. You know, maybe the Muslims are the ones that fight back, and he's got to put in a leader for that region. But if you had to guess, what 3 regions do you think would be the ones that would be plucked out and replaced?
I would think the ones that are that are far away from the center of activity in the first place: Europe, the Mideast, Israel, and you know, this is where the action of Revelation is going to be in that theater. So I would almost expect the outlying regions would not be important in the prophecy.
So maybe a North America Union would be one of the ones that's plucked out.
Well, it could be. You know, I mean, you don't see South America in there as well. Mm-hmm. You don't see Australia, for instance. Most of Asia, you don't see that Bible prophecy. But you see, and from Europe, you see the countries of Turkey, Russia, Europe, Rome, those, you know, Libya, etc. This is the center of, I think, the universe for Bible prophecy. Mm-hmm. So the ones on the outside, the outskirts, exactly. I don't see them as important.
Mm-hmm. Did you ask AI a question today? Is that right?
I did, yes.
Is it called Perplexity?
Yes, that's the name of the. Actually, it's kind of a search engine, but you can use it for research as well.
It's called Perplexity. Okay.
Exactly.
Is it like ChatGTP, but it's called Perplexity?
Sort of. Yeah, it's called Perplexity. It's they sell it as a search engine, an alternative for Google, but it's very capable to provide research and leads to more information. Mm-hmm. And I like it because it always gives a link to the original source where it got something from. So you can click on it and see all the articles that it drew from.
Okay, when we come back, I want you to tell our audience what you asked this program and how it responded. My guest is Patrick Wood. His website is technocracy.news, technocracy.news. Let me ask you, my friends, do you appreciate the program, the 35 years of work and research and books and all we're doing? All the questions we ask, all the scripture we bring, all the context, reason, and logic? Do you? You do. Thank you for your support. WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com. We'll be right back.
I'll tell you one little quick story. We had a Worldview Weekend client who lived in California, lost their house. Very wealthy guy. He didn't use Bitcoin. He came over here, drove to Arizona with $286,000 worth of his gold because he had no money and no house available. His bank was shut down because he couldn't have access to his bank account.
Was this during the fire? Was this during the fires?
During the fire. Didn't have his driver's license. He lost it. The state wouldn't give him a new license because he had no active mailing address. Real mess. So he came to Arizona to buy a house. He's moving everything over. He said, the only thing I got in my possession that I can get liquid with right now is my gold. I gave him a check for $286,000, and guess what? I didn't need his social, his driver's license. Sort of smiled, and I said, you know, I know you and Brandon talked about how this worked, but boy, this is great. I feel good. I got my money. Nobody bothered me, and I'm protected, and it's private.
Just simply go to worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, worldviewgold.com. Well, I read to you Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. But this is also discussed in Daniel chapter 7, verse 24. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall rise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after him. He shall be different from the first ones and shall subdue 3 kings. 10 horns, 10 kings. He's going to subdue 3 of them. One has to wonder again, when will these 10 Federation of Nations come together? What will be the cause? Is it World War III? Tulsi Gabbard last night, it's reported, put out a video. I watched it, telling everybody how we're on the verge of World War III and nuclear war that could kill so many in seconds. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen a person in the intelligence arena that high be so graphic. But is this going to be used, World War III, to bring about this new coalition of nations, the 10 horns? And again, who will be the 3 that have to be subdued? Going to begin is Patrick Wood of Technocracy.news. Before we go to your perplexity question, what do you make of Tulsi Gabbard's video that she's put out?
Honestly, I think it's a bad thing to say that's what she said. Mm-hmm. It's for fear mongering at this point. We don't need that in the world. We have enough trouble already with things that we see. Of course, it could always happen. But is a threat really imminent at this point where we need to be concerned about it? I don't think so. I just don't see it.
Well, here's what she had to say, just for those who maybe don't know about it yet. Here we go.
A single nuclear weapon today could kill millions in just minutes. Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core. People, buildings, life itself. The shockwave would crush structures miles away, killing and maiming countless people. And then comes the fallout. Radioactive poison spreading through the air, water, and soil, condemning survivors to agonizing deaths or lifelong suffering. A nuclear winter could follow, with smoke and ash completely blocking the sun, plunging the world into darkness and cold, killing crops and starving billions. Acid rain would scar the earth, wiping out entire ecosystems. This isn't some made-up science fiction story. This is the reality of what's at stake, what we are facing now. Because as we stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before, political elite and warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers. Perhaps it's because they are confident that they will have access to nuclear shelters for themselves and for their families that regular people won't have access to. So it's up to us, the people, to speak up and demand an end to this madness. We must reject this path to nuclear war and work toward a world where no one has to live in fear of a nuclear holocaust.
And folks, You maybe have just been looking at and listening to possibly, high probability, in my opinion, right now, the next president of the United States or a future president. Former Democrat, turned independent, joins the Trump administration. She was running around with some of Obama's people in Hawaii. She becomes an independent, goes into the Trump administration, has a military background. She's now being embraced by pretty much all sides of the movement. This lady could very well be a future president because that language right there sounds like someone that wants to stop this globalism as well as nuclear war. And she might be able to actually convince a lot of people the men have really messed up. It's time for Tulsi Gabbard, a lady. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, she's jockeying for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I have to say, I repeat,
A single
I think her statement is irresponsible at this time.
It is shocking.
And I'm not impressed at all. I just do not believe she has a interest in, what she says she has an interest in.
Yeah, but you know how many people will fall for this, right?
Totally. Oh, yeah, absolutely. How many people fell for COVID in the first place? Yeah. Okay. And first they fell for the lockdowns, et cetera. Then they fell for the shots. How stupid is the public at this point that would fall for something like this? But yet they probably will. So what's the agenda? Mm-hmm. Was COVID just about COVID? Was it just a disease? Was it just because was a shot just the shot to alleviate the disease, or was there another agenda underfoot? We've already examined that 6 ways. Sunday,
we know
right?
It was about money. It was about controlling people. It was about depopulation, people dying. It was about depopulation, people now in a major crisis, fertility crisis, people not being able to have children. Yeah. Dr. Thorpe has proven with a group of doctors that it's created psychosis, the inability of some to think, to reason, to even be able to grasp. So now they're numbed-minded robots. Mm-hmm. So you have a docile population. There's a lot of reasons. And I think we've just touched on some right there. So what would a World War III accomplish if we go there?
Nothing. Nothing.
Except for maybe more depopulation, more depopulation. But do they really want to damage all of these minerals and ground and the environment they all claim that they love so much? Maybe nuclear war isn't the way it goes down. Let me tell you, bypass the nuclear war thing. Use that as the tactic to scare people. But use cyber attacks, drones, take down the power grid of a few nations, maybe America, and let the world watch Americans go at it and kill each other, and let the world sit back and get reports about what has happened to America when they were without power for 6 months, and then ask the world, are you guys ready for peace? Are you ready? I guess what I'm trying to say is nuclear war is a real problem. World War III checks a lot of boxes, but nuclear war is a real problem at many levels. But letting one or two nations go down in ashes as a way of getting rid of America, which is really a problem for them with our independence here, but also using us as an illustration of what can happen to societies that don't learn to get along and now surrender their sovereignty to a benevolent world government system. I see that as more probable than nuclear war. What say you?
Well, that's a good consideration. I'll just say that the fear of war is worse than war itself. Mm. The fear of war is going to be what drives whatever solution comes out of this whole thing. Maybe it's national security interests. Maybe it's just the police state. Maybe it's the scientific dictatorship part of this whole equation. But the fear of war is going to be the thing that drives that kind of a change. Remember when 9/11 took place, that was an event that shocked the whole world. But in the whole scheme of things, it wasn't really World War III at that point, but it shocked us enough to the point where we saw the fallout of it. It was all about creating the security state in the United States. It resulted in the reformation of the intelligence community, for instance. We had the Patriot Act came out of that. It created the TSA. Everybody's being, patted down at this point in airports, et cetera. And we have the universal ID has been almost implemented at this point. Well, that was the fallout of 9/11. We don't have to talk about 9/11 itself, who did it, that sort of thing. That's not the issue right now. But the fear of further retribution at that point was what drove the security state to where it is right now. The fear of nuclear war at this point is a much bigger thing than 9/11. And at this point, what would they want to do with us at this point to stampede us into some other solution? Where could we go from here with this biosecurity state? I can't really answer that, but I see technocrats on almost behind every rock at this point.
Wow. All right. So before we run out of time here, what did you ask Perplexity, and what was the answer?
Well, I had a long discussion with the. When I say discussion, I'm not talking with a person here. I'm just asking questions to Perplexity. It's good for researching information, and you get leads for information. But here's what I ask: is there any technocracy agenda that would benefit from fear mongering over World War III? Right? It gave me. Basically, here's the summary of it in case. It said there is clear evidence that elements of a technocratic agenda could benefit from amplifying public fears over the prospect of World War III, particularly through the mechanisms of information operations, perception management, and the consolidation of power around technological infrastructure. There you go. In a nutshell, that sounds like a very plausible plan for technocracy at this point. It went on, however, the technocratic agenda can and does benefit from fear-mongering over World War III by making legitimate expanded surveillance, centralizing control over critical infrastructure, and positioning technocrats as rational, indispensable problem solvers in a climate of insecurity. However, this agenda remains deeply political and is often pursued in tandem with or as an appendage to broader state and elite interests. So, this is a very detailed answer. And I would always check it from other sources as well. I just would not take it at face value. But nevertheless, I listen to other people in the news talk about stuff. This is a better explanation that I see from some of these talking heads, not yours, but you get my point. There's a lot of speculation going on, and people don't have a clue what they're talking about by and large. But when you consider a flat-out answer from this AI program, at least, that there's clear evidence that elements of a technocratic agenda could benefit from amplifying public fears.
1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829. This, while we're also getting word that the U.S. prepares to order departure of all non-essential staff from Baghdad embassy. Now, why would you do that? Well, maybe because you've gotten word that Israel is about to hit Iran. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. And you don't want Iran and their proxies in the region going after the embassy in Baghdad. Remember that big, huge embassy, like with shopping malls and fire stations? It's huge. Woo, there's a lot heating up. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. Phone lines now open.
Looking for a trusted source to understand today's world through a Christian worldview? Worldview Tube is built on the 35 years of Worldview books, columns, research, and high-profile interviews of Brannon House. Want to know more about Worldview Tube, its founder, history, team, and mission? Visit worldviewtube.com/about. That's worldviewtube.com/about. Worldview Tube is your source for understanding the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
That there are more U.S. embassies in the Middle East that are being cleaned up and cleaned out. I don't know. We'll have to get a hold of Aaron here as well. Let's see if we can get him on Brannon House Live tonight. Of course, we'll also be covering the maybe will be nothing. I don't know. Riots on Saturday, June 14th. We'll keep you posted on all that. In the meantime, let's go to the phone lines. 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. What do you think about what we've been laying out today? 1-800-347-9829. Let me ask you, Patrick of Technocracy.news. We've been talking about Alice Bailey, the mother of the New Age, who had a demon she consulted with. She wrote 24,000 pages. She, of course, had a great influence over the United Nations, Robert Mueller, and so many there at the UN. How much do you think these world leaders, they don't have to get in the same room together, smoke-filled rooms, because they have the same worldview? They're being manipulated, a lot of them. A lot of them are being manipulated and pushed down a certain corridor. But how much of this you think is being directed demonically? Daniel was praying, and the angel said, don't think I didn't hear that your prayer wasn't heard from the first day. I was delayed by the Prince of Persia. And you think there are demons operating over various nations today?
Well, maybe not in that sense, but we do know from the Bible very clearly that there is a God of this world, that's the devil, and he exercises control over the whole system of the world. He doesn't control the assets of the world, if you will, and like the creation of God. He's not in possession of that, but he has possession and control over the system of the world. This is what we're talking about here.
That's
the
right.
system of the world, right? And so everything you can rationalize at that point, say, well, everything that goes on is under his control at this point. But it's always under the ultimate authority of God. He has limits that can't be exceeded.
Which is why it says that when the restrainer stops restraining, the Holy Spirit stops restraining, then you got a tribulation, right?
Yes.
Let's go to the phone lines.
Right.
Dick in Maryland, line 2. Dick, thank you for calling in today.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Patrick, thank you for your article about the digital prison. Trump's planetary-powered surveillance is turning America into a digital prison. Well, think about the technology that you talk about all the time. The technology, much of it exists in China. If Los Angeles was in China, how would China use technology to get peace reestablished?
None of them would be able to buy their dinner tonight. Their phones, all their digits would stop. They wouldn't be able to get an Uber. They wouldn't be able to do anything. So they would be forced to comply if they want to get their next meal. If they're living in a 15-minute city, they wouldn't be able to get back in. if they're living in an apartment, the door to their apartment wouldn't unlock. They'd be sleeping on the ground outside.
So wouldn't Palantir technology that is being promoted by the Trump administration be part of that solution? Is that not something that could be utilized in any area where we've got people going at each other to use surveillance to technology that exists in Palantir today? I mean, is that a realistic possibility that we're going to end up with a digital prison being dropped down across places where people can't get along, and we're going to have technocracy ruling parts of the world?
Patrick, quick answer.
Well, that technology could be used right now against these protesters, but it's not, because they're continuing, right? They will continue to riot until enough public sentiment is against them to drop the net around the whole country of scientific dictatorship.
And that's the Hungarian thing that Brandon's talking about. You create a problem. It's so bad that people will accept the lack of freedom in order to get peace. Is that not an example of what you were talking about?
That's exactly
it. And this is Brandon.
Exactly, Dick. And this is where people will eventually accept what we call freedoms, what they're calling freedom cities, not 15-minute cities, but freedom cities. Now, if you don't want to live in a town or a city with the people waving the Islamic flag and wearing the keffiyehs and doing this garbage, you can move into a freedom city. This will not go on in a freedom city. That's starting to sound pretty attractive right now if you just think about it in earthly terms, right, Patrick?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This is utopia.
Well, couldn't that be utilized in other places like Gaza, Ukraine, and Los Angeles,
100%.
and Austin?
It'll be used to control the whole world. It'll be the beast system. Yes, 100%. Great call as always, Dick. Mary Beth in Florida, line 1. Hi, Mary Beth.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Am I on the air?
You are.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say thank you for you and Patrick for having the discussion about transhumanism, because there's a growing evidence, of it merging man and machine. I was wondering if you have heard of Matthew Scow.
I have not.
He's the creator of Died Suddenly, and he's raising money right now. He's putting out a documentary called Sapien.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to draw attention to that.
Okay, I will have to go look that up. Yeah, let me go look that up, Mary Beth. Thank you for that. Real quick, Charlotte from Milwaukee, line 4. Go quick. We'll get you in, Charlotte.
Oh, great. Hey, I was just wondering if they were going to, I don't know who they are, but are going to use that how do you say that?
Chat GTP?
That kind of stuff to, I had a girlfriend that was listening to that app or whatever, and now it's running her life. Like, she can't leave the house without it. So I was just wondering if they would use that in this war to get people to do things. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
To control their behavior. Scientific behaviorism. Right. Patrick, comment on that before we run out of time.
Exactly. You see this all over the place right now, where people are looking to chat bots for therapy, etc., and they're being captured, literally.
And just wait till they add your robot into the house, who's also programmed to correct your thoughts and process and argue with you and whatever else, right? Get you back on the right track.
That's right.
Technocracy.news. He'll be back with us tonight. We got some video footage for you to play tonight on Brandon House Live. Technocracy.news is his website. Stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider on VCY America, vcy.org, vcy.org. Thank you for watching and listening. Take care. And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and you here at Worldview Tube. Patrick, isn't it interesting to watch all this going down? Here's a headline last night. Newsom tells Nation that Trump is destroying American democracy. Governor Gavin Newsom of California called on Americans to stand up to President Trump in a nationally televised address. So, do you think this coming Saturday, with all these protests that are planned, will that be a big nothing burger, or do you think actually some of these cities we're going to see some real problems?
I think we could see some real problems, and you'll have to wait for sure. But whenever dump trucks show up with loads of bricks and they dump them in the street, it's for for the rioters to come along and find the pile of rocks or the bricks, and they start throwing them. There's organizations behind that. Those things just didn't appear there, right? So yes, there's a possibility this could be real trouble across America. It's going to be met by the military and the National Guard. So these people should watch out for themselves, I guess.
We'll be covering it here. We'll be covering it here. President Trump tweeted this today. Our deal with China is done, subject to final approval with President Xi and me. Full magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied up front by China. Likewise, we'll provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities, which has always been good with me. We're getting a total of 55% tariffs. China is getting 10%. Relationship is excellent. Thank you for your attention to this matter, end quote. I'm not for the Chinese students getting access to our universities. I think
not at all.
Many of them are spies. Many of them are reporting. Many are stealing, I think, intellectual property. I think the Chi-Coms need to educate their own people. The only reason we have the Chi-Coms over here is because we want to fund these useless, no good universities with money from the Chi-Coms who pay for their education, because most Americans are figured out, most of these institutions are no good, that spending 4 years at one of these schools and coming out 6 figures in debt is a fool's errand. Unless, of course, you want to be a doctor or a lawyer. But even that is why? There's too many lawyers, and good luck being a doctor in this environment today. Where everyone's going largely is computers and trade, the trade industries. Some say those will be replaced by robots, but there'll be a lot of trade things that robots are not going to be able to do for some time yet. But this idea that we're going to keep opening up our schools to the Chi-Coms, this is not good. This is not a good idea, is what I would say. What are your thoughts, Patrick?
I don't like it at all. I don't like the fact that the Mideast has poured billions of dollars into our education system either. I don't like all of the Indian students that have come here, mostly on visas that allow them to stay on for a period of years after they graduate. These jobs should be for Americans first, and not for the Chinese, not for the Indian population, and anybody else that wants to come to school here. If they can pay for their own way, of course, that could be one thing. But en masse, we just don't want these people supporting our education system in the first place.
100%. All right. What else are you watching over at technocracy.news before we let you go today?
Well, I think we're going to see this. We'll have to have the discussion later about AI God. The rising of AI God is a major thing that Christians need to consider. And I've been studying this. I did give a presentation this last weekend to a prophecy conference here in North Phoenix, explaining the concept of AI God and showing just how far is advanced at this point. It's really stunning. And
how about this, though, real quick? Amazon testing humanoid robots to deliver packages. Are you telling me self-driving cars, autonomous cars are going to pull up and a robot's going to get out and walk the package to my door?
That's right. Yeah, you got it.
And when is this going to start?
Well, it's testing phase right now. I would think you're going to see this in early 2026.
And what are they going to do to keep people from messing around with these robots? Because I'm already reading on social media, people are joking about how they're going to kidnap them.
No, exactly. You throw them in the swimming pool.
How are they going to?
Oops.
What are they going to do?
Tripped.
What are they going to have a massive electrical charge if you try to touch it? That'll go off, or what?
I wouldn't know about that either, but there's going to be conflict because Amazon doesn't want you to destroy their $20,000 robot at that point.
No, they don't. Which to me seems like, why don't they just do more by drone? You know?
They're going to do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, it's getting creepy, that's for sure. Technocracy.news, technocracy.news. Patrick will be back tonight on Brandon House Live. Thank you, Patrick. And thank you, folks. Hey, where are you going to get an hour of conversation like this and also mixing in the Bible? We need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. May God save America. Take care.